Okay, cool. All right, so for this homework review, we're going to be going over Bootstrap and CSS and a little bit of like mobile responsive CSS to make our app kind of good for mobile devices. So again, while I'm going through this, if you guys have any questions, seriously, you can just stop me like anytime and just ask, and I can definitely go over anything in more detail. So what I did is I kind of did a little bit of work this morning, and I went to this website. So this website is getdivi.com. This is sort of a startup, not sort of, it is a startup in Salt Lake Valley here. It's a really big company now. They're doing great. I know a few people that work here. It's a really cool company, but they had a pretty cool, simple website as far as like their sort of landing page. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to take this as sort of my design. So I'm going to kind of treat this like my Figma, if that makes sense, and try to create an app, not an app, like a page, and style it so that it looks as close as possible to this. And so I did a little bit of work this morning. I got something that looked pretty close. So this is the final product that I only went down to here. So this page goes on for a while. I didn't want to just make everything, but I created this. So, it looks pretty close. There's a couple, there's like some padding issues here. You can kind of see it move. But so I could spend some more time and really dial this in and make it an exact sort of one-to-one. But I think that this will kind of meet our needs here. So I also made it responsive. So I had it kind of move in like that. So you can see how I made that image disappear when it gets to a certain breakpoint. And then I also made these move down to have 2 per row. And then I centered this second client logo. So it goes right there. And then here you can see we have this photo, we have this text here, and I swapped those. And so when it goes into a mobile view, this will actually bump on top and this will get bumped to the bottom like that. So yeah, that's kind of like, some of the just like the basics around, mobile design is kind of how things will reorganize themselves based on smaller and smaller viewports. So let's go ahead and go through how we would do something like this. So this is the one we're going to be working on. So just a blank page at this point. So it's going to be this file that we're going to be working with. So, okay. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to create this navbar. So I didn't worry about this color transition. It's also sticky, and when you start scrolling the color transitions, I mean, it's not too hard to do, but we're not going to worry about that so much. We're going to worry more about layout. So I'm just going to kind of worry about colors, layout, etc. So yeah, so let's kind of look at this. So what I did is I basically just went to React Bootstrap and came here and started just kind of going through my components. I was like, okay, like what is a good component? And I was like, that's probably going to be like a Bootstrap Navbar component. So I think I came down here and I grabbed, I believe it was this one right here, which is going to be this navbar right there. Because when I go to the actual Divi website, we can see that there's sort of a logo here, and then there's some sort of like menu, like navbar navigation items, and then these sort of like login, auth icons over here. So I wanted one that had this sort of logo thing going on. So I basically grabbed that and then pasted that over here. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me just make sure this one I got. I think, actually, no, I think I actually grabbed this one. Let's do that. right, is this one, because this one has that branding. It's just, instead of having an image, it has text, so we'll add that in. So I found this navbar. This looks pretty close to what we have here. So let's just go ahead and grab that code, copy that, and I'm going to come over here. And I kind of like laid out my sections here with some comments so that I sort of know what I'm working with. So let's throw that right in there, save, let it format. Okay, cool. So there's our navbar. So we can come here and there it is. So at this moment, it does not really look like this navbar. It's a little bit sad. So let's start to make some changes to that navbar. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that this background color is matching this. So not the white, but the dark background color here. So most companies and graphic designers don't ever use pure black. That's kind of a design no-no. So this is probably like a very dark gray, technically speaking. So I have a plugin in my Chrome that I really like called Colorzilla. I definitely recommend you guys download something like this, but it allows you to pick a color from a page and pick that. And then I can kind of move around and it'll pick whatever color I'm on my web page. And it gives you the RGB and the hex code, which is super nice. So I'm just going to come, actually not there because it switches, but it's the same color as this, sort of like this div. So I'm going to select that and it automatically copies that to my clipboard. So that's great. So that's going to be our background color for our navbar. So so this navbar here, I've already imported all my stuff from React Bootstrap, but this is like a Bootstrap component. And have you guys used styled components before? Has James gone over those with you guys?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we're going to do a lot of styled components in this review. So styled components, as you know, the basic syntax is essentially this. So you const will do like custom thing, so you just name it. Oh, it has to start with a capital letter. That's just part of the syntax. So we'll call it custom thing equals, and then you call styled, and that comes, so you have to import styles and styled components, and that allows you to use this styled keyword, styled, and then you do a dot, and then you sort of put whatever HTML or JSX component or element that you were wanting to customize after the div. Then you put some backticks. And I like to kind of bring that last backtick down. And then inside of here, you can essentially just write custom like CSS, just straight CSS. So this is going to be like a custom div. So I can just do like, we'll do height equals 30 pixels, width equals 36. It'll be a little cube, and we'll give the background color of red. Save, and then I'm just going to call this right here. So now let's hit save, and there it is. So my little tiny div that I created. So what happens is basically you name a div and you give it a bunch of CSS properties, and then you can just call that name right here as if it's sort of like creating your own custom Bootstrap component, if that makes sense. So this custom thing is just a div, but it has this CSS applied to it. So because it's a div, we can actually treat it like a div. So we can do, an opening and closing tag. So we can just say like, hello, and that'll show up there. So it's kind of overlapping it because I set a concrete height and width, and so it's not going to push out the width of the div behind it, but you kind of see what's going on there. So that's sort of an example of what like a styled component looks like, at least like the syntax. So what we're going to do is instead of just making some custom div, you can actually take existing Bootstrap components. So for example, this navbar, which comes from Bootstrap, and we can turn this into our own styled component. So we can further customize Bootstrap's components, which is really cool. So we're going to do const, and I'm going to name this custom navbar equals styled. And now the difference is whenever you're styling a component versus a piece of JSX. So a piece of JSX is going to be like a div or an H1 or a P tag or an A tag or an ING tag. That's all going to be like kind of vanilla JSX HTML. And that's when you're going to do the dot notation, like dot div, styled.h1, styled.p. If you want to style an existing custom component, in this case, an existing Bootstrap component, instead of doing dot notation, you're going to do parentheses, and then you're just going to throw in the Bootstrap component that you want to customize. So in this case, we're going to have a Bootstrap navbar that we're going to call custom navbar. That's the name that I gave it. And then just like normal, you do your two backticks. And then we can write some custom CSS in here. And then we can apply it to here. So let's write the CSS first. So we know the background color. I can't remember if I overwrote that or not. So I'm just going to take it again. So go there. Cool. So copy that to my clipboard. Great. So go back to our code. And you guys can see my screen, right? Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, cool. For some reason, like the little green border wasn't like showing up. So, okay. All right, so we're going to do background color for our CSS selector. And I'm just going to paste in that color that I copied from my clipboard. So we'll do that and hit save. Okay, so the next step, let's go back to our app. The next step is, we now have this custom, Bootstrap navbar called custom navbar, but we need to call it in here. So I'm actually just going to take that navbar and I'm going to replace that with my custom navbar, just like that. And so what I did is now our navbar is going to be this color. And you might not have noticed a shift because those two colors are extremely similar. But just to prove my point, I can kind of take this and I can call that red, hit save. And this should change to red. Let's see. Oh, custom navbar. Oh, I think it's because I have that. Let's do one sec. There we go. So yeah, so that little like tag that was in there, that was overwriting my CSS here. So like you have to kind of watch out for that stuff. And like we'll run into that a lot through this demo. So I'll explain more about that in a minute. But yeah, so basically, yeah, our custom navbar is now working. So I'm gonna go ahead and just go back and bring navbar. Cool. All right, so now this should be the color that we want. Let's just check. Maybe the custom page. And it's a little different. Actually, I think I do want to get rid of this. I don't think it quite split. There we go. Okay. So again, it's hard to notice, but it just got a little bit darker. So yeah, I needed to get rid of that tag because that was overwriting my CSS. So okay, cool. So now our custom navbar is the color that we want it to be. So it's the same color as this sort of dark gray on the Divi page. Cool. Okay. So let's see. The next thing I want to do is I think that I want to bring in the logo. So this logo here. So I just saved this. I just like right-clicked this image, saved it, and then brought it into my code, or yeah, my folder structure. So I created an images folder and I just put it right there. And then I imported it here. and I'm just calling it Divi logo. And we're going to put that right in here. So it says Navbar brand, href home. Instead of this text Navbar that is being displayed right there, I actually want to create an image, and I'll give it an alt text. I'll just say logo. You should always put alt text every time you have an image. Then I'll call source. And then in my source is where I'm going to reference that image. So we'll do Divi logo. And then I'm do my slash there because the image tag doesn't have a closing tag. It just has the slash. So, okay, cool. All right, so our logo's there. That's cool. It's the same logo. That's great. It's getting closer, but it's like massive. This logo is just gigantic. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to make another style component, but this time we're going to style a custom image tag, and we're going to kind of alter the size of this image in CSS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do const, and then I'm going to call this, let's call it logo image equals, and this is going to be a styled.img. So again, img, like the image JSX tag or the JSX element here is not like a part of Bootstrap. That's just vanilla native HTML or JSX. So again, we'll do the dot notation. We'll do our double back quotes here, and then I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. Like I don't know exactly what height this image is set at, so I'm just going to it looks like it's probably around 50 pixels or so. So we'll just say 50 pixels for the height. So if you just set one property, if you just set height or just set width, it will scale the other dimension like true to size. So it's not going to distort the image. So I'm just going to set the height. I'm not going to worry about the width. So we'll go ahead and hit save. And then what we need to do is we now need to replace our image tag here with our new logo image that we created. Save, and boom, there we go. All right, so now we have this cool logo here. Looking like pretty close, like the size looks actually about right. It might actually be a little bit different, maybe like 45 pixels or something, but I'm not going to worry about that. It's close enough for now. But yeah, okay, so we've got our logo image going. That's awesome. So the next thing that I want to work on is these links right here. So it's YDivi, product, and resources. So the first thing is, the text here is obviously wrong. So let's just go ahead and add those. YDivi. What else is here? YDivi, products and resources. So we'll do YDivi. It's product, yeah, product and resources. So you'll notice how, if we look at our design, I'm going to call this our design, these links are all capitalized. But when I typed it over here, I didn't make these all caps. It's usually best practice to not make any design choices in your HTML, or to do really any design in your HTML, but to just write out your copy and the text just as true to form as like the vanilla text can be. And for example, I would say that like making a word all caps is a design choice, whereas capitalizing the first letter of each of these sort of like link titles, that's not so much a design choice, that's more of a grammar thing. So we're actually going to capitalize this text in our CSS because we want to make all of our style decisions, all of our styling actions in CSS, not in the HTML. So we're going to leave that like that. We're not going to capitalize everything, and we'll change that down here. All right, so we got that. So now what we want to do is we're going to want to apply some CSS to this, because look at this, the color is off. Like these are like all caps. These are also kind of bold, like the font weight is bold. These are pretty thin, and these are sort of centered there. We also have these two things over here, this sort of login button and the sign up button, and we don't have those here. So I'm actually going to create just another one of these. That, and here's where I'm going to put that login and sign up thing. What is it? Login sign up, yeah. So we'll do login, and we'll do, and I think we want that sign up. Let's make that a button. So I know that Bootstrap has a button because I can just come here, and here we go. So yeah, like here's our buttons. So this button here is like, looks pretty dark to me. It's almost black. Like even here, you can sort of see it against that. So that actually might be like a true black. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick this React dark button. So if I try to find it in the code here, it's going to be this button right there. So instead of having that nav link, I'm actually just going to do button, and then it has variant equals dark, and then I think it said sign up, and then I have an extra caret there, sign up button, cool. All right, so we'll hit save, and let's check it out. Okay, cool. All right, so we got YDivi, product resources, and then login, and then sign up. So one thing, first off, just right off the bat, is I'm noticing is these, like all of these elements in the navbar are spread out to the very extreme edges of this navbar. So like if I keep going, like the logo is going to hug this left side, and this login and sign up, these links are going to hug this right side. And so I want my app to do that as well, because right now this is not hugging that side over there. You see, it's like kind of like just sort of floating out in the middle here. So one way we can do that is by adding a special tag to our container here. I'm going to call it fluid. And what that does is it basically makes the container that all of your stuff is sitting in 100% width. It talks about that here in React Bootstrap. So you can use container fluid for width 100% across all viewport and device sizes. So that's exactly what I did there. So I want to make sure that I did that because that's going to allow this stuff to sort of hug the sides. Now this one isn't quite moving over there, and we'll get to that in just a second. Okay, cool. So we've got that. Let's see. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of styling on these links here. So again, to style an already existing Bootstrap component, we're going to create our own custom component based off of that Bootstrap component. So let's go ahead and let's call this, we can call it like nav link. That's basically what it'll be. Nav link equals styled, and then it's going to call nav.link, which is exactly, that's what we're going to replace up here. We're going to replace each of these nav.links with this nav link. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I want to capitalize all of my text. So there's a really cool CSS property called text transform, and you can just apply uppercase to it, and that will make all of these uppercase. So let's go ahead and just replace these with my brand new nav link. Copy. So we kind of see these changes happen in real time. Cool. All right. Yeah, so you can see how already these are now capitalized just because I added this text transform uppercase. I want to make them bold. So I'm going to add my font weight property, and I'm just going to call it bold. So that's going to make those a little bit bolder. I want to change the color. I want to just change the color to the straight white and add our semicolon. Okay, so you can see how I changed the text color here, but it didn't change here. So this is one of the things you'll run into a lot when you're trying to do styles components based off of an existing UI library's component, in this case, Bootstrap. So Bootstrap components have a lot of CSS and stuff sort of packed into them already. And so sometimes you'll try to change something about it and it won't work because you'll run into a conflicting CSS property that's called, inside of Bootstrap. So what you can do to ensure that your thing takes precedence, that your CSS actually works and overwrites Bootstrap CSS, is you don't want to always do this. You only want to do this when you run into the situation where yours isn't working. But you can come in here and you can add an important tag. And that's going to cause your CSS to overwrite Bootstrap CSS. So add the important tag. Now our text is white. So that's cool. Okay. The other thing that we want to do is, so there's kind of like some space here between these guys. A decent amount of space actually, and these are really close together. So I'm just going to add some margin right. So that's going to add to the right of each of these a little bit of margin. So that's a little closer. In fact, I could probably even add a little more margin right. 20. Let's do like 30. That's probably more realistic. There we go. That's pretty good. As far as like that distance, looks, pretty close. It's not exact, but I'm just, trying to hurry here. But, you want to spend more time if this isn't like your final project or whatever to really dial things in and make it exact. But I'm really showing you kind of how to get to that point. So, okay, so we got that. That's all good. Let's see what else we have. So we have this login link. So we're going to kind of do a very similar thing to that. It's going to be a little bit different though, because it's going to be over here. It's going to have probably its own margin that it might be a little bit different than this. So I'm actually going to create another custom component. I'm going to call this login link styled nav.link. That. And then for the login link, I want to do text transform on this as well, because it is uppercase in the design. I'm just going to go ahead and swap this in for now, so I can sort of see my changes real time. I don't know why that didn't finish. Let's save. Refresh that. All right, cool. So that's uppercase now. All right, so we got our text transform. We want to do our font weight, bold. We want to do our color and add our important tags. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. The next thing we want to do is I want to add some space between these guys. So I'm going to try adding margin right. That's like 30 pixels. Let's see what that does. Very cool. So yeah, so that gave us like a little bit of space there. That's cool. All right. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is I want to like get these centered, because you can see that like we have this over here, we have this over here, and these guys are sort of centered in between those two. But on mine, these are like left justified against my logo. So I want to move these over to the center, and I want to get this guy all the way over to the right, my login and sign up button, but they're kind of hugging this right-hand side. So to do that, I had to do a little bit of Googling work to sort of figure out the best way to do that. And I found some documentation on some class names that you could give to your nav components in Bootstrap navbars to sort of mess around with the horizontal alignment of some of these links. And so by default, I think when you go here to like the navbar, I think the one that I chose, navbar, and like I chose navbar. and I chose this dark one here, which is going to be this guy, and it has this ME auto. And I honestly don't even really know what that stands for, but in the documentation that I read, it says that you can put an MS auto, and that kind of acts like a centering type function. And so I just added MS auto to these class names for the navs, and that just, separated these out. So now we're getting pretty close to how those guys look, at least as far as like the spacing goes. So that's cool. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is let's stylize this button a little bit, because that button looks like pretty trashy. Because we look over here, this one is like a pill. So this sort of button that has these rounded ends is called a pill button in like the web design world. So we want to create a pill button, whereas currently we sort of have this, like, you can barely see it, but it's just sort of this square button with these slightly rounded corners. So we're going to create a custom button. So, but it's not going to be any button. It's going to be a custom Bootstrap button. Let's come down here, we'll do const, and let's call this, let's call it the sign up button equals styled dot, and then we'll just put button in there for the Bootstrap button. Oh, we don't need that dot. There we go. Cool. All right, so we got our sign up button there. All right, so there's a couple of things we want to do. So if we look at this, you can see that the background of that button is black. You can barely see it against this sort of gray. So let's do that first. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to change this to my brand new style component, sign up button, so that I can sort of see my changes in real time. All right, so let's change this background color of this button to be black. So there we are. All right, so I'm going to change background color, and I just know that the hash for black is going to be that. It's technically 6 zeros, so they're all the same. You can actually truncate that to just 3. So we'll do that and hit save, and cool. Okay, so there you go. It's black. You can barely see it against that background, just like on here. Pretty cool. Okay, so we want to do that. We change the color. We want to adjust the text transform. We'll do text transform. We'll do uppercase, so it's now capital. We'll change the font weight to be bold. Change the color of the color is already white, so we're actually probably good there, so I'm not going to add that. Okay. And it's kind of hard to tell, but there's actually a slight border around that button. So you can call the CSS border style call and call it none. And that's going to get rid of that border. So you probably just saw it like just disappeared. And the last thing we're going to do is we want to make this button into sort of a pill shape. So that is going to happen with border radius. And you can get the border radius in percentages and in exact pixel measurements or amounts. Percentages are going to kind of do these like overall skewing type curves. So like if I do like 50%, see if you can see it. You can see how like it sort of turns that button to like this, like the whole button is like this circle. It's like an oval. But that's not what we have here. And here we have like these parallel straight lines, top and bottom, and then it curves there on the end. So if we don't want to curve everything, we just want to curve the end, we're going to go away from percentages and we're going to just do exact pixels. We'll call that 25 pix, and there you go. Now I have a little pill button. So, if we like change that background to say, we'll call it like blue, just so you can see it. So there's our pill button right there. So black. Cool. Okay. So the other thing is, it looks like there is some space, like some padding here, 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 right there, right there. Whereas on mine, it's like this, my nav bar is a little bit narrow. So let's try to change up a little bit of that. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to look at my logo image here. So looking at this logo on our design, you see that there's like a decent amount of space there. And there's a decent amount of space here and here. But on mine, that space is pretty narrow and small. So I'm going to actually add some margin to my logo image. So margin is very similar to padding, but they're different in two important ways. So let's talk about that just really quick. So margin is going to be the space that pushes out from the element that you're calling it on. So if I call like 50 pixels of margin around this logo, then it's going to push out 50 pixels on all sides. Padding is similar, except instead of pushing out, padding pushes in. So what that means is it takes the border around whatever JSX element you're calling it on, and instead of pushing out, it's going to push the content inside of there in. And so it's actually going to shrink whatever is inside of here. So those are sort of like the two ways you can deal with spacing. You can do margin and push things out, or you can do padding and push things deeper and deeper into their containers. In this case, you know, the Divi logo is fine, like the size. We don't want to like shrink it down to give that space. We want to push out from it and give some breathing room there. So we're going to do some margin here. And so margin and padding work the same way in that there's a margin for top, right, bottom, and left. You can call each of those individually. So you can do like margin top, you can set that there. You could do margin right, set that, you know. You can call each of them individually, or you can just call margin. And you can give a value, or actually 4 values like this. And these happen in a specific order. The first value is going to be the top margin. The second value is going to be right. The third is going to be bottom. And the last is going to be left. So it starts at top and then it goes clockwise. So top, right, bottom, left. So I want to add a little bit of margin on the top. So we'll do 10 pixels. You can see, there we go, just push that down. That's because the logo pushed out some space. It added 10 pixels of space right there. I don't really want anything on the right because like that spacing looks good. But on the bottom, I want to match the same margin as on top. So on my third number here, which is going to correspond to the bottom, we'll put a 10. Boom. And just push that out a little bit. And then on the left, I want this left margin to equal the margin on the top and the bottom. So we'll put a 10. And boom, that just pushed that out a little bit. So cool. So that looks pretty good. Let's see. So that's good. Login link. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, the sign up button here. So this, I think, is maybe a little close. So if we look at this, it has about the same level of margin. So the logo has this level of margin on the left. We want close to the same amount of margin on the right over here. So we'll come back here, we'll go to my sign up button, and I'm just going to do, again, margin. But this time I'm just going to call margin right because I don't need to add it anywhere else. So we'll do margin right, and I'm just going to add 10 pixels. Save. Cool. I just pushed it out a little bit. So, all right, that looks pretty good. Like it's not perfect, but I mean it's like pretty close. So I'm not like too worried about it. I could spend more time. Hold on a sec. My theme is making me click this. There we go. Okay, so I could spend more time really dialing it in, but that's just going to be me tweaking some of these numbers. These are the things that are going to at least get you to this point. So okay, so there's our nav bar. It looks like pretty good. Again, I didn't deal with any of these drop downs or anything. You can totally do that. It's just going to be adding the correct Bootstrap components. And again, even the drop downs, even here, you can style these because you can see that that's going to be nav dropdown.item. You could make that its own styled component and do that there. One other thing that I want to go through is when I was going through and kind of creating this page, one really, really important tool is going to be your inspector. So I will all the time, I'll right click on something, I'll hit inspect, and I'll go to the elements tab. And it's going to, whatever you right click on, it's going to highlight automatically that specific JSX element. And you can actually over here at the top CSS portion says the element.style. You can add your own CSS here. So I could say margin left. I could do 200 pixels. That's just going to add 200 pixels right there. So you can kind of come in here and play around and see what CSS you need to add. Again, it's not going to permanently add it. If I refresh the page, it's going to go away, but it at least tells me, oh, okay, if I wanted to do that, I added margin 200 pixels to this logo image. I could come here. I could be like, oh, okay, I need to update my top, bottom, or top, right, bottom, left. This left one, change that to 200 or 100 or whatever. It's a really, really powerful tool and a really, really good way to kind of hunt down CSS bugs. This is kind of like your CSS bug finder in the same way that the console is sort of your JavaScript bug finder. Although for JavaScript, you have a lot of other tools as well. But yeah, so definitely make use of the tab for elements in your console. Okay, cool. So the next part we want to go to is this sort of hero image thing right here. So we're done now with the nav bar, at least done enough, looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and move on to that. So what I'm going to do for that is just looking at this. I kind of want to think through how this is laid out. And as I'm looking at this, I can kind of, in my mind, envision the way the code's going to look. So maybe I want this entire section here. This is sort of the whole hero image. So not the nav bar, but right here to there, to there, to there. That I think could be a div. And that div is just going to contain all of this stuff. Then inside of this div, I think I could maybe call a Bootstrap row. And so this whole thing will be one row. And then maybe inside of that row, I could call 2 columns. And I'll split it down the middle right here. And this will be column 1, and it'll have this stuff. And this will be column 2, and it'll have this sort of weird photo of the phone and their credit card that they have. And that'll be over here. So it'll kind of have these 2 columns right there. And that's also going to allow me to kind of mess with my responsiveness. If I have those in 2 columns, I can kind of rearrange those as my viewport switches. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a div. And I know that I'm going to need to probably add some CSS to that div because I think I want to make the background color of that div to be this sort of dark gray. So I'm just before I even add anything, I'm just going to create a new style component, and I'm going to call this hero div. And this is going to be a style.div. We'll do that. And then just right off the bat, I'm going to do background color and let's see if I can find that color. Yeah, it's right here. We'll do copy, and then we'll paste it right here, and cool. All right, so there's that. So I now have this hero div with this background. So now I'm just going to come in here, and I'm going to call my hero div. Didn't auto-populate, so I'll call it out like that. There we go. All right, so there's my hero div. So refresh. That's not going to show up yet because there's a div there, but it's like completely empty. Like I don't have anything in there yet. And so the div has 0 width and 0 height. So what I actually want to do is I want to add some height and some width to this. So, but I don't want to really add that just yet, I don't think. Well, let's come here and look at this. All right. So looking at this, this has a height, obviously. The width is going to be 100% because it stretches out, based on the viewport size. But maybe I could set the height. So I have another tool in my Chrome called, see if it'll pull the name, called Page Ruler Redux. It's an awesome tool, but it lets you basically measure in pixels the dimensions of certain things on a web page. So I think the navbar ends up there. So I'm going to click and I can drag this down to there. Cool. And that's going to tell me the dimensions that I just created, that I just pulled down using my tool. So the height is about 587. I'm going to guess, I'm a little close there. So I'm going to say it's like about 575 is probably what the real height is there. So let's go back to here. So let me just close that. There we go. And I'm just going to set the height to 575 pixels and save. And there we go. So now we have a div here that has a width of just by default is 100%. I'm just going to make it 100% just to be on the safe side. And then the height is 575 pixels. So cool. So now we have this section here, only it's blank. We don't have any content in there yet, but we'll add that in just a second. So cool. Okay. So the next part is I want to make this a row. And the reason I want to make this a row is because when you go to the React Bootstrap site, and you go to the layout, the grid system in Bootstrap depends on rows and columns. And columns are probably the most important because those are the things that are going to be laid out horizontally and then rearrange based on the viewport size. But in order to have columns, you have to have a row. Like columns have to live in a row. So if I'm looking at this section right here, I can see pretty clearly there's 2 columns here. And it's kind of divided right here in the middle. There's this column with this content, then there's this column with this photography over here. So I'm going to have 2 columns, but if I'm going to have 2 columns, I have to have a row for them to live in. So I'm going to come back to my hero div here, and I'm going to create a Bootstrap row right there. And then I'm going to create 1 column, which is going to be this column. And then I'm going to create another column, which is going to be this column right there. Okay. So in our first column here, we have this like content basically. And this has some styling. Like this text is big. It has a fancy font. It's bold. It has some like margin or padding around it. This isn't super styled, but I might want to style it to give it its own custom padding and margin. And this button is styled for sure because the default Bootstrap buttons are these sort of square buttons, and this one is a pill button. So I'm going to want to probably have some custom stuff for all of this. So I'm just going to create that really quick. Actually, no, let's code it out first. Okay. So we're in our first column here, which is going to be this column on the left. This is probably, it's big, it's bold, it's out there, it's like a title. I'm going to make that an H1. And I'm just going to copy this text over. Boom. There we go. H1. So we have our H1. And then this, I'm just going to call this a P tag because it looks like it's a paragraph. You know, I guess it's no, it's 2 sentences. Yeah. So it's, you know, it's a paragraph. We can call it that. We'll do a P tag. And then we'll copy that. And we'll put that over here. And we'll hit paste. All right. So, and then we have this button here. So let's also create a button. I'm going to create a Bootstrap button. I think the blue Bootstrap button is called primary. I just know that because I've made a bajillion buttons, but we'll have get a demo. Let's save. All right, let's go check this out. All right, cool. All right. So here is our stuff. It looks really bad, but you can tell there's a couple important things here. For one, it ends right there in the middle, because by default, whenever you add columns to a row, it's going to have them take up even amounts of space compared to the other columns. So each of these columns are that I set here are going to take up 50% of the space. Or in other words, the Bootstrap grid system is based on 12 columns, as like a 12-column grid. And so each of these is going to take up 6 columns of that grid. So yeah, so we know that like our column system is working because these are stuck over here on the left, and eventually our photo is going to be stuck over here on the right, and it's going to live in this column. So okay, cool. So there's some stuff here, obviously, that's not working. It has this like weird gray color. There's a whole bunch of stuff wrong. So let's go ahead and create some style components. So I'm going to create one that is going to be called, we'll call this hero title. How about hero title? And this is going to be a styled H1. And the first problem with it, actually, so I can see the changes kind of happen again in real time. I'm just going to swap out my H1 tag here for my brand new hero title. Let it save. All right, cool. All right. Okay. So the first thing is the color is like all wrong. It's like this weird gray. So let's go ahead and make that white. We'll hit save. And boom, there we go. I got the white there. If we look over here, like this font size is pretty big. This one's a little smaller, so I'm just going to boost the font size a little bit. I'm just going to call 3EM. 3EM is basically another way to size things in CSS versus pixels. EM, I can't remember what it stands for, but they are relative numbers, and they will sort of change, and they're dynamic based on the viewport. So it's actually a lot better to size things with EM versus pixels, but for right now, it's okay to use either one, but I'm gonna go ahead and just use EM here just so you can kind of see it work. There's also, so this is like just butting up against the left here. This, you know, if we look at the design, it has a whole lot of nice breathing space here. So let's go ahead and add some of that in. So I'm going to add some padding. So I'm going to do padding instead of margin because I want to shrink in on my content here. I don't want to like necessarily expand out. So, but again, it can be confusing to know which one to use sometimes. So sometimes I'll do like margin, and if it's not getting me what I want, I'll try using padding, and sometimes that will work. It can be a little bit confusing, and also especially when you're working with an external UI library and making your own changes to it, it can be even more confusing. So if one's not working for you, try the other one. And sometimes even a combination of the two will sort of get you where you need to be. So, but I'm just going to sort of ballpark this. So we'll do 70 pixels on top, do 180 pixels on the bottom. We'll do 10 pixels, or 180 pixels on the right. We'll do 10 pixels on the bottom. and we'll do 70 pixels on the left. And let's make our font weight bold so that, you know, nice and bold. Save. And cool. All right. So that, you know, looks pretty good. Cool. All right. So it's not perfect. We'll make some additional changes to this, but it's good enough. The next thing we want to do, we want to customize this. So I'm going to just kind of call this hero subtext. It's going to be a style component for equals style. It's going to be a p tag style component. Come down here. Again, I want to change the color to white, and we want to give it padding as well. So I don't want to add any additional padding to the. Actually, let's look at this first and just see how that looks. So hero subtext. Let's go up here and swap out our p tag with our new component. Hero subtext. Let's save. All right, so it's white. Cool. So this space there actually looks pretty good, I think. You know, this maybe has a little bit more, but you know, in a perfect world, or if I was working on this as like my project, I would really finesse that. But it's good enough for now. So I'm not going to add any padding to the top. So we'll do 0 pixels on top. But we want to add the same amount of padding to the right as we have up here. Let's do 10 pixels on the bottom, and we'll do, I think I had 70 pixels. Yeah, 70 pixels on the left. We'll do that. Save. And okay, so that looks pretty good. You know, it's not like perfect, and we'll make some additional changes to it, but it's looking okay. I'm like relatively happy with how that looks. So, but with how this looks. So let's also make some changes to our button here. So this is, we've got like a capital. It's like the text is all caps in like a pill button shape. So we'll do another const, and I'm going to call this hero CTA button. And I like to name my components based on where they are in my UI and then what they are. So, you know, like I have things that like live in the nav, so like nav link, navbar, etc. I didn't do a sign up button. I probably should have, but for all the stuff in my hero section, I'm naming a hero and then like what it is. So the hero div, the hero title, the hero subtext, the hero CTA button. And this is going to be a styled Yak button. So I'm going to put it in parentheses. And let's swap it out up here. So this is going to be hero CTA button. Let's save. Cool. And okay, so what's going on with this? Refresh. There's some. Oh, I didn't like complete that. There we go. Cool. Hit refresh. There we go. All right. So what I want to do is, first thing, I want to make this a pill button. Let me just bring this over here a little bit. So I'm going to change the border radius to be 25 pixels. So it's going to kind of curve it. I want to make the text transform uppercase. I think I want to make it bold. So we'll do font weight, bold. What else did I add to this before? Yeah, that looks okay. I think I want to add a little bit of padding around this. We'll do 10 pixels, 15 pixels. This is going to kind of give the text inside of there some breathing room. 10 pixels, 15. So this blue is pretty bright compared to that blue. That blue seems a little bit darker. So I already like checked the color and I got it a little bit earlier, but it's going to be this color. So we'll go ahead and change the background color to be this. I'm going to make that a little bit darker. So now you can kind of see there's like a border there. Like I changed the background color blue to be darker. Now we can see this light blue border. I don't want that, so border none. That's good. And then we want to, so the padding gave some space inside of here. It pushed in from the button in on my text. Now I want to make some padding around the whole button, or it's not padding, some margin around the whole button, because I want to move it over to the right. And do I want to push it down? I don't know if I want to actually push it down. So I really just want some margin on my left. So I'm going to do margin left, and I think I did 70 pixels for all of them. So they're all 70 pixels left over. So cool. All right. So here's how it's looking now. Here's our design. So we're definitely, looking pretty good. We're in the ballpark of sort of where we want to be. So the next thing we want to do is we want to get this like cool like photo thing over here. So what I did is, this is a really hacky move, but I basically took a screenshot of just this image and then loaded it into my code here. Normally that's not what you would do, but we're going to do it here, and I'll kind of show you how it works. So if you look over here, you can see the screenshot that I took is like this. So that's the whole thing. And we're going to put that inside of that second column. So let's see. So inside of here, we're going to do an image tag and do alt. You always want to do your alt text. I'm just going to say hero, and then source. And then the source is going to be, I think I already imported it. It's going to be hero image. So I don't need quotes, I need curlies. We'll do hero image like that, and then close that out, hit save. I'm getting an error there, expected. Source hero image, hero image. There we go, okay, went away. All right, okay, cool. So there's our hero image. It's like freaking massive, but we don't want that. We definitely gonna want to make some changes. So again, we're gonna make another style component here. I'm going to call this hero image, let's say. So const makes sense. Hero image equals style to be a styled image tag, and I'm just going to change the height to be about 500 pixels. So I think the height of our entire div was about 575, and I don't want it to go all the way to the bottom. I kind of want a little bit of space there. So I'm just going to call it 500 pixels. And then, yeah, let's just do that. We'll hit save. And, oh, I got a little typo there. There we go. Save. All right, I need to swap out my image for my hero image style component. Hero image. Save. Okay, cool. All right. So there's our hero image. So it's looks kind of funky because it should kind of hug the right-hand side. So it kind of looks like it's like peeking out, if that makes sense, sort of like over here. You can see how over here it's like kind of behind this right edge. But on mine, it just kind of cuts off right there. That's not cool. That's not what we want. We want it to go all the way to the right. So let's go ahead and do that. So I was doing some reading in the Bootstrap React documents, and it basically says that the Bootstrap grid system is built with Flexbox and is fully responsive. And then it says, new or unfamiliar with Flexbox, read these CSS tricks for the Flexbox guide. This is like a killer Flexbox guide. I definitely recommend all of you check this out. Bookmark it, save it, practice it. Like this is like, Flexbox is sort of like the key to layout with CSS. So you definitely want to get good at Flexbox. But what I did is, after sort of going through some of the tricks here and reading about Flexbox with Bootstrap, I realized that, okay, I can sort of like add Flexbox properties to some of my some of my divs, and I've read too that I was like, okay, so it says that like the system is built on Flexbox. So I'm like, okay, that means that I can like probably make rows and columns into Flexboxes. And so that's kind of what I did. So what I want to do is I want to move this all the way over to the right-hand side. And to do that, I need to make the parent container that my image lives in into a Flexbox. And that happens in CSS. So I actually need to make a styled component for a column, because this column is my parent component for my hero image. And so to move this image around, I need to make this column into a Flexbox. So I'm going to make another, again, we're going to have a lot of styled components. It's kind of like the name of the game, but I'm going to call this hero image call, and this will be a styled Bootstrap column. And in here, I'm going to, so to make something Flexbox, you just need to call display flex. And then I'm going to give it a flex direction. So I want the flex movement to go in the direction of the row. Again, you can read more about this in this guide. It's super, super good. Like it will teach it really, really well. So you should for sure check that out, because it'll explain all of this in even more detail. But once you set the flex direction, you can then set this setting called justify content, which allows you to justify things to the left, to the right, to the top, to the bottom. So we want to justify it to the right. So let's kind of watch that just sort of happen in action. Save. Oh, I need to swap this out for my new hero image call. There we go. Save. And oh, okay, yeah. So I realized that I was like sort of messing around with this, but like I couldn't get it to work with just this. And I think it's because I'm like trying to overwrite a column. And my guess is this column already has Flexbox attached to it because of what this says. And so what I ended up doing is there's another CSS property called float, which allows you to also push things over. So I also set a float right. And I think, let's see, sorry.
Will justify content flex end work?
Content select. I think I tried that before, so we did that. There we go. So just, yeah. Okay, flex direction row. But yeah, perfect. Yeah, there we go. So flex end. Cool. So I did that. I think what I ended up doing is like, this is the better way to do it. I think I tried to do right, and then I couldn't get that to work. And so I came over here and I floated it right, which is like sort of like a hacky way to do it. I think, what did I do exactly? I can't even remember, but anyways, yeah, what you just said, like doing flex end, that is definitely the better way to do it. So, okay, so there we go. So now we've got that sort of like bumped over there to the right. It's looking pretty good. And let's see, and like this needs a little bit of space below it. So let's come over here. Let's do like margin bottom. We'll add 130 pixels to there. I should like bump that down a little bit. Let's see. Not quite. Let's see. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. All right, so we'll deal with that business in a sec. So yeah, but for now, like, you know, at about this level, it's like not looking like too bad. Like it's a little funky, but we're at least getting close. We're getting in like the right place. So let me actually, let me see. Let's do a little bit of like responsiveness on this. So right now it's like not really responsive. You can see how like this just like goes down, doesn't do anything, and like it's like floating down here. It looks really bad. And like this is still not really like there's this weird extra space over here. So what I want to do is I actually want to make this a little bit more responsive. What I want to have happen is if we look at our like a design, when this gets responsive, basically this photo disappears and this kind of takes the center stage. That's what we want to have happen on our app. So that is sort of where we're going to talk about columns and span sizes. So basically, if we go to like the React Bootstrap grid system documentation, it talks about responsive grids. And when it talks about responsive grids, it has all of these weird little codes. It has like SM, LG. So the SM is for small, LG is for large. I think M is for medium. XS is for extra small. XL is for extra large. What these are referring to, these sizes, those are referring to the screen size or the breakpoint that you're at. So what this is saying is on a small screen, we want this column to take up 8 of the 12 available columns that Bootstrap has in its grid. And we want this column on a small screen to take up 4 of the 12 available columns in the Bootstrap grid. So 8 plus 4 equals 12. And so if you want to have your columns, if you have multiple columns and you want them to take up the full width of your container, these numbers need to equal 12, and you'll divide up those numbers to sort of change the ratio that they're at. So if this equaled 6 and this equaled 6, they both equal, they're both going to take up 6 columns of the 12 available columns. They would actually be split, boom, right down the middle. What you can now do is, like I said, so once you understand that, you can add multiple sizes for each column. So you could say, okay, when we're at a medium viewpoint, so somewhere around here, we want this column to take up 8 of the available columns. We want this column to take up 4 spaces. But when we get down to an extra small viewport, boom, right there, we're going to switch to the extra small size. And we want this column to take up all 12 of the available spaces. And this one, we only want it to take up 6. So it's going to boom end halfway right there. So that is sort of how you deal with your breakpoints and how things rearrange, is by setting the screen size. And when you're on that screen size, you tell it how many spaces you want it to take up. Remember, 12 is 100%, 6 is 50%, and every other ratio is going to correspond exactly to that. So if you have 3 columns and each one equals 4, then they're each going to take up exactly 1/3, just like this. So what we want is, we want not only for that to change, but we actually want, so right now, it should be, we're at like about a medium to a small breakpoint right here. We want each of these to take up 6 columns at about a medium breakpoint. So I'm actually going to come into here, and in this column in my hero div, actually maybe not 6, because if we look at this one is actually like over a little bit farther than like this image, probably, at least based on how I did, because I screenshotted the image and the image ends like right here. This actually comes out to about here, and the image comes out to about here. So instead of 6 and 6, I'm actually going to make this 8 and 4, I think. So in my column and I'm going to make it the same for large and medium. So I'm going to set large equals 4. And I'm going to set, oh, sorry, we want this one to be 6 because this is our top one. This is the content. Large to be 6. We want medium to be 6. And we want our hero image column at large to be 4. And we want our medium to be 4, like that. Oh, and I think that's why I needed to float it right, because when I set these, for some reason, it kept it, it like pushed it back out, and I don't know why it did that, but anyways, I added float right
6 instead of 8 on one of your columns.
6, 6, 6. Oh yeah, so I don't know if that's going to change it. Let's see, 8, 8, and let me take out the float. Maybe that fixed it. Take that out. Save. Oh, sweet. Okay, cool. That's awesome. Okay, perfect. So, okay, so what I did, so yeah, okay, so we have at a large screen, this column here is going to take up 8 spaces, and at a medium screen, this column is going to take up 8 spaces. At a large screen, this column is going to take up 4 spaces, and at a medium screen, this column is going to take up 4 spaces. So now it's looking closer and closer to how this one looks. And this side actually has a really bad breakpoint right here. Like that's like not good. That's kind of on them, but we'll bring it out to here. So it's looking more and more like our design, which is exactly what we want. So what we now want to do is we want to cause this column and this image to actually disappear when we get to our small and extra small breakpoints. In fact, actually probably not small, probably just at extra small. So just so you know, you can look up the React breakpoints, or not React, the Bootstrap breakpoints. And I think it lists them out right here. And they're right here. So the extra small breakpoint is going to start when your screen or your viewport is at anything less than 576 pixels. Small is going to be greater than or equal to 576. Medium is going to be greater than 768. Large at 992, and so on. So you can test what pixel width or what dimension your viewport is at by just doing your inspect and then grabbing your window and kind of pulling it like that. You can see that up here in the top right, it's going to show you what you're at. So right now I'm at 1012 pixels wide. This is 1012 pixels wide. So when I get to 576, that should be when I hit my extra small breakpoint. So it's going to be, right around here. We're at 584 and down. Come on, computer. There we go. Yeah. So we just went past 576. Now we're in our extra small breakpoint. So above 576, I think we still want to have our image here. But when we get to 576, we actually want this guy to disappear. So I did some Googling. I looked up sort of in the documentation on how to make something disappear at certain breakpoints. And I realized that there are some class names that you can give your components that will make them disappear at certain points. So what I'm going to do is, before I get to that, I want to set my small, because we're going to keep the small the same way. So that'll be 8. And we'll make this one the same too. So 8 and 4. But at the extra small point is when we want to make this disappear, and we want to make this take up all of the available space. So what I'm going to do is at extra small, so we're in our first column here, the column that has this, we're going to say 12. Because when we get to that extra small breakpoint, I want this column to span, take up all 12 spaces. I want to go all the way across and take up all of the room. Then at 12, I want this guy to disappear. The way we do that is we add a class name. And that class name is, you have to add D none, and then you say DSM block. So what this is saying is we want to block basically the view of this at anything smaller than the small breakpoint. So in other words, at the extra small breakpoint, we want this to disappear. And so again, this was just found in the Bootstrap documentation. So we'll hit save, we'll come here, and then we'll come all the way over here, and boom, right there, our image disappears, and this is taking up all of its space. So there's still some extra space over here. That's because I have some margin. I think it's margin, hero, title. Yeah, I have padding that I probably want to adjust a little bit to sort of get this to look how I want, but we're getting pretty close to how the final design should look. So another thing is you'll notice that like, as I'm shrinking and before that image disappears, this stuff like shrinks down below our div. That's because our hero div, we set it to have a specific height, and we don't actually want it to have a specific height because that means that this height can never change. So as our content grows, because it's being compressed in a responsive manner, we want our div to be able to react to that as well. And the way that we do that is to not use an exact like pixel value, but to just use percentages. So I'm just going to have the height be 100%. And the height is going to be pushed down based on the margin that I gave to my button here. So you can see that in my hero CTA button, I gave margin bottom of 136 pixels. That's what this space is here. And I can double check that actually by going to inspect and then hovering over my button. And you can see there's that orange there on the bottom. That is that margin. And that's going to always push this div down. So now as I compress this, that's going to stay down. And then we hit our breakpoint and that image goes away. So now it stays in its little div just like it should. So cool. All right. So we have that working. Oh yeah, that's still kind of funky. There we go. So I think that's why I had to do the float right, because when I got into the extra large and large breakpoints, it like snuck out a little bit. And again, I'm not exactly sure why. And like Landon, like maybe you know why actually. I don't know. I just kind of found this fix, which works. And so yeah, but anyways, so yeah, so now like this is looking like pretty good, you know. We've got, you know, like this is our design. And if we kind of like, you know, swap between them, you know, there's some differences. Like you can see how like some of the margin, like padding is off, but like that's easily fixed. We're at least getting to like a really, really good point here. So it's 3:17. Let's say we just ended it at 3:30. I'm going to go over one more thing. I think it'll just kind of help drive home the point about sort of the responsive design. I'm going to create, let's see, what should we do? Let's create this little section right here, because you can see that when this gets responsive, they switch. And what I actually did in mine is I made the text go above the picture. So I kind of like changed the order. So let's do that just so you can kind of see how that works. So let's come over here. And so we're going to skip the brand sections for now. And we're going to go into the business section. I have the full code of everything that I did on GitHub, and I'll give that to you. So if you want to like look at like how I did this part on mine, you can see that. for sure. So you have that for reference. But let's go ahead and just do this business section really quick. So I'm going to go a little bit fast just to get this sort of like stubbed out a little bit. And then we'll kind of like dive into it a little bit. But okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this whole section, I'm going to let it live inside of its own div, which is pretty normal. I'm going to call this the business section. I'm going to call this the business div equals style.div. Do that. And then for this div, I think, let's see, what did I do? Business div. Okay, so I want to change the background color. And then the background color is F6, F4E9. That. I think I did, yeah, width, again, just like above 100%, because we want it to be responsive. We want it to adjust, and the height to be 100%. So let's come up here and let's add our business div. Sweet. Okay, we got our business div. Inside of that business div, we're going to have a, so looking at this, you can tell it's very clear. There's two columns here. There's this column and there's this column. So we're going to add a row to sort of house our two columns. And then I'm going to add two columns. That, save it, cool. Then inside of column 1, we're going to have our image. So this is definitely going to need to take some CSS. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to create a custom style component. I'm going to call this business hero image via style.image tag. And what did I give this one? Image, I'm just going to copy this. So give it some width as well as some padding. And then I did business title. Okay, so we have a business title as well. So that's going to be an H1. So that's going to be this right here. It's going to be our H1 tag. I'm going to create that custom component really quick. Business title, business div. We have some business subtext. That's going to be this. It's going to be a P tag, like we kind of had up here. So again, that component like this. And then we have the business CTA button. And we'll do that. So again, it looks pretty long, but it just has, the border radius, font weight, the text transform, etc. Like there's nothing super fancy that we haven't gone over yet in here. Cool. Okay. Then I'm going to come up here and I'm just going to fill this out really quick. So have the business div that's going to live in, we have the row. Okay, in the first column, we're going to have the business hero image. It's going to have an alt of business. It's going to have a source, and this is just the source. I just basically copied the URL, the source image URL from the Divi website. We'll do that there. Save. Just make sure this is all like showing up. I added a colon there at the end. Save. There we go. Save. And I need to add that. Okay. All right, so we got our image there. Business hero image. Okay, and then in the second column, so this column, we want to have the business title, and this title is going to be this text. Put that there. And then beneath the business title, we're going to have the business subtext, which is a style component for a P tag, and that's going to be this text here. And copy and paste. And then beneath that, we're going to have the business CTA button. and it's going to say learn more. All right, cool. All right, so here is our stuff. Let's see, there should be a little bit of, let's see, margin of business hero title. What do I have here? Business hero title, padding. Yeah, there should be a little bit more space. Actually, maybe not. Look at this. Actually, yeah. So yeah, this is a little bit above that image. So it's not perfect, but you know, it's like pretty close. Okay. So now we have that all coded out. I just want to get that stubbed out. It's how like the basic styling. But now what I want to focus on is the responsiveness. So right now, these two columns just stay right there. If we go all the way down. Okay, so here's our extra small breakpoint right there. Boom, you can see it shifts right there. That's 576 pixels. We go below that threshold and this happens. So basically, you know, up here, what we want to have happen happens, you know, like that disappears, that shows up there, it looks great, but this is looking really bad. Like this image just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. You can't even tell what it is. And this is just kind of squished over here to the right. What I want to have happen is at this point here, I want to have this copy show, like bump up above this and take up the entire row. Then I want to have this bump down below and be larger so we can actually see it. So the way that rows and columns typically work is as you get smaller, the ones on the right are going to go below the ones on the left. So normally the default behavior is if we set these, you know, to add extra small, an extra small viewpoint that they each take up 12 spaces. The default behavior is that this will stay on top and the right one will bump down to the bottom. We want to reverse that order. We want this last one, the one on the right, to bump above this one. So let's go over how to make that happen. So we're in our business div. So we know that like the responsive sizes, that all takes place in the column, just like it says over here in our React Bootstrap documentation. So we're going to make all of our changes over here inside of the columns. So what I'm going to do is you can set, there's an extra property in whenever you set the size of a column called the order. And in the order, you can determine what order that particular component, what order that particular column should show up in on your UI, regardless of the order you coded it in on your JSX or your HTML. So let me give you an example. So I'm going to say that at the small size, which is, you know, about here, and that's still pretty good. You can still tell it's a screenshot. So at the small size, you have to do two curly braces because you're going to pass in an object. You're going to set the size. So these should be about split down the middle. If we look at the real page, each of these, like there's kind of like an even split right there down the middle. So each of these should probably take up 6 spaces, so about 50% each. So we're going to say that this first column should be a size 6. And I'm just going to specify the order here, but you can say order first. And so we're talking about this column here, this screenshot. We're saying we want it at the small viewport size to take up 6 spaces and to be the first one, which is exactly what we have. That's great. For this column, I'm just going to say we want it to take up 6 spaces at small. I'm not going to give it the order because these are both in the same row. And so if you specify the order for one column and you have 2, the other one will kind of defer to that one and act accordingly. So if this one is the first, it's first in order, first in line, this one's obviously going to follow it. It's going to be last or second or whatever, but we know that this is going to be the first one. So it's going to show up on the left. You can say size 6, order first. Okay. Now at the extra small viewport size, you can do this. And I want to say size of 12, and I want order to be last. So I want it to go beneath this one. And over here, I'm going to say extra small. And I just want this one to take up all 12 spaces available at the extra small viewport. So now what should happen is we're in the medium to smallish viewport range. So we're dealing with this one and this one. So this first one is the order is going to be first. It'll show up right here. It's going to take up 50% of the space. In other words, 6 spaces. This one is going to take up 6 spaces as well. But once we get into our small breakpoint, so boom, right there. So boom, hits right there. Let's see. Oh, hold on. Okay. Okay, so they went on top of each other, but the order did not. Oh, it's because of this. There we go. I had a typo. Order. What do they have? Size. Yeah, 12. There we go. Okay. All right. So let's go back quick. So I had a type. I had X instead of extra small. Okay. So when we come to our extra small breakpoint, boom. This one now. So now we're looking at the extra small breakpoint. So our first thing, which is our business hero image, this guy, its size is going to be 12. So it's going to take up the full width, but its order in the row will be last. So it's going to be pushed to the bottom. And our text, by default, because this is set to last, we know that this is going to be at least before that one. That is going to be pushed above it. So that's kind of how you can like change the order. If we did not specify the order, so again, the image gets pushed below the text. If we didn't specify the order, so we can like do that, and we can do that, then it's just going to follow the default where this will stay on top at the extra small viewpoint. But if you want to switch the order, again, you can just, you just specify it as such, hit refresh, and it will now be on the bottom for the extra small viewport. So yeah, so that's like basically, that's like, I don't know, sort of some basic Bootstrap responsive CSS. One other thing I want to go over, well, we'll go over this later. I want to go over how I changed this font. You can see how like this font is a serif font. You've probably heard of serif and sans serif font. Serif fonts have these little like hangy things off the end. So these little like loops and these little like marks and markings at the ends of the letters. Sans serif fonts don't. They just kind of end in straight lines. So if we look at this, our design, you can see that this is a sans serif font, but then it uses a serif font for its H1. And so I changed that here. This is a proprietary font that they use. It probably costs like literally like $1,000. So I obviously didn't buy that for this demo. I just found a font on Google Fonts that was at least kind of similar and used it there. But we'll go over how to do fonts later. We don't need to worry about that now. But yeah, so that's kind of like the basic CSS demo. Yeah, do you guys have any like questions for me, or like anything else that you want to like go into a little bit more in depth on, or any comments?
How did you find that, like the class name?
Yeah, let me pull that up. I think I found it. here. Where is it? Right here. Okay. So what I went to, I think what I typed in was, I think I did React, Bootstrap, hide at breakpoint. So basically I wanted to hide something on a specific breakpoint. And I obviously clicked on that, didn't get my answer. I didn't find anything that satisfied me. But then I thought, oh, okay, cool. This is the official React Bootstrap GitHub. We're talking about the grid system. And I was like, okay, maybe this will have what I want. So I clicked that. And oh, wait, that did not bring me there. How did I get that? See, where is it? Oh, I think maybe I did like hide React Bootstrap, hide column at breakpoint. Bootstrap grid system. React Bootstrap hide. Oh, I think it might have been here. Hang on. I'm trying to remember exactly like, yes, okay, this is what I did. Sorry. It's hard to remember like the journey that I went on when I was like doing my Googling. Okay, so what I did is, yeah, I typed in React Bootstrap hide at breakpoint. This is just going to give you guys an example of like how I Google things and just sort of how you can find answers. But I did that. I clicked this one. I didn't want this like on external devices. I was like, maybe that would do it. I don't know. But I saw this one, how to hide columns, is exactly what I wanted. So I clicked that, and it was like, okay, you can do in plain React plus Bootstrap, you can do this class name, and you can do hidden XS div. And I was like, okay, cool. But using the library React Bootstrap, that no longer works. So he's like, okay, so that doesn't work. But then he linked to this right here. I went there. Oh man, that's still not it. Where did I get to that link? Anyways, I'll like go through my history and see if I can figure out how I got to this page. But I found it here, where it talks about hiding some elements with Bootstrap. So this is the vanilla Bootstrap. So this is not React Bootstrap, but I found it here where you can add a class to. Okay, I thought it might have been down here. Anyways, you can add these classes to hide something on certain sizes. And so I only wanted to hide that one on extra small. And so I added both of these classes, to that specific column, which column is up here? Hero div, hero image column, yeah, right here. So hero image call, class name equals that. And that got rid of it, basically hid this entire column at the extra small viewpoint. So yeah, I'll try to figure out exactly what I typed in, like what I clicked on. I did a ton of Googling, so I can't remember exactly everything, but I'll try to figure out the exact path I took to get there. Yeah, any other questions? Okay, cool. Let me go ahead and stop sharing. And I'll stop the recording.